The year is 1991, and the biggest adult film star of the 1980s is sitting in a federal prison cell. Not for drugs, not for violence, for $2,000 in unpaid taxes. But that's not even the most tragic part of this story. 3 years later, doctors would tell Ginger Lynn Allen she had cancer and needed immediate surgery that would change her life forever. And in between those two nightmares, a relationship with Hollywood's most notorious bad boy, Charlie Sheen, would become the one thing that kept her alive. This is the truth about Ginger Lynn's final years, a story of loyalty that destroyed her, love that saved her, and a battle with death that forced her to rebuild everything from scratch. Comment, I had no idea if this shocks you. To understand why Ginger Lynn ended up in federal prison, you need to know about the scandal that nearly destroyed the entire adult film industry. In 1984, a 15-year-old girl from Ohio named Nora Kuzma walked into the same modeling agency where Ginger had started her career just 1 year earlier. Using a fake ID and the stage name Tracy Lords, she became one of the industry's biggest stars almost overnight. For 2 years, Tracy Lords made over 100 films. She was everywhere. Magazine covers, video store displays, pay-per-view channels. She was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the producers were making millions. But in 1986, federal investigators discovered the truth. Tracy Lords had been underage in nearly every single film she'd ever made. The FBI raided production companies, studios were shut down, millions of videos were pulled from shelves and destroyed. And then the government came looking for someone to testify. They wanted Ginger Lynn to flip on the producers. These were the men who had made her the highest paid star in the business, the first ever Vivid girl with a 7-figure contract. The government offered her immunity. All she had to do was testify that the producers knew Tracy was underage. Ginger Lynn refused. She told investigators she didn't know anything about Tracy's real age, and she wouldn't lie just to save herself. That decision to stay loyal would cost her everything. Here's where the story gets even darker. After Ginger refused to cooperate with federal investigators in the Tracy Lords case, the IRS suddenly became very interested in her tax returns. They claimed she owed $2,000 in back taxes from 1986. $2,000. That's not a fortune. That's not even a month's rent in Los Angeles. But the IRS didn't just want the money. They wanted her punished. In 1991, Ginger Lynn Allen, the woman who had appeared in over 70 films, won multiple AVN awards, and had her face on a million VHS covers, was sentenced to 4 months in federal prison. The media loved it. The tabloids ran headlines like "Queen Behind Bars" and "From Vivid Girl to Prisoner." The humiliation was designed to be public and brutal. But the real punishment happened behind those prison walls. Ginger later described those 4 months as the loneliest, most terrifying period of her life. She lost her mainstream acting opportunities. She lost most of her savings to legal fees. She lost her sense of identity. When she walked out of that prison in late 1991, she was 30 years old, financially destroyed, and Hollywood wanted nothing to do with her. But just when everything seemed completely hopeless, someone unexpected entered her life. Smash the like button if you respect the loyalty that landed her in prison. Now, when you hear the name Charlie Sheen in connection with any relationship, you probably think of chaos, scandal, and tabloid headlines. By 1990, Sheen was already Hollywood's most notorious bad boy. He'd been arrested multiple times, struggled publicly with substance abuse, and had a reputation for volatile relationships. So when news broke that Charlie Sheen was dating Ginger Lynn Allen, the former adult film star who'd just gotten out of prison, the media expected fireworks. But here's the part of the story that nobody talks about. For 2 years, from 1990 to 1992, Ginger Lynn was the most stable relationship Charlie Sheen had ever had. While he was battling his first serious stints in drug rehabilitation, she was the person keeping him grounded. She didn't enable his addiction, she supported his recovery. And decades later, when Sheen's reputation had been defined by domestic violence allegations and public breakdowns, Ginger Lynn said something that shocked everyone who knew his history. In a 2015 interview, she was asked about her time with Charlie Sheen, and she said, "Not one time did he raise his voice to me. There was no violence. He was kind, generous, and supportive during the hardest time of my life." This is the counter-narrative the tabloids never wanted to print. While the world saw Charlie Sheen as Hollywood's dangerous bad boy, Ginger saw the man who helped her rebuild her confidence after prison destroyed her self-worth. He connected her with mainstream casting agents. He took her to industry parties where she could network as Ginger Lynn Allen, not just as a former adult film star. For the first time since prison, she believed she could have a real Hollywood career. She landed roles in Young Guns 2, The Devil's Rejects, and even mainstream television shows like NYPD Blue. She was so close to breaking through. But when their relationship ended in 1992, Ginger faced a new crisis. Without Sheen's support system and still carrying the trauma of her prison sentence, she entered what she would later call her darkest decade. The mid-1990s became Ginger Lynn's forgotten decade. After her breakup with Charlie Sheen and the loss of her mainstream Hollywood momentum, she essentially vanished from public life. No interviews, no appearances, no social media presence, because social media didn't exist yet. For nearly 7 years, Ginger Lynn Allen lived in complete isolation. But what the public didn't see during those years was a private battle with addiction and depression. The pressure of being one of the most recognized faces of the 1980s, combined with the trauma of federal prison, the financial ruin from legal fees, and the collapse of her Hollywood dreams, created a perfect storm. She's spoken about this period in recent years, describing herself as completely adrift and struggling to find any sense of purpose. The industry that had made her famous had moved on. The mainstream Hollywood career she'd worked so hard to build had disappeared. And the money she'd earned during her peak years was gone, consumed by lawyers and the IRS. By 1999, Ginger made a decision that she's admitted was purely out of financial desperation. She briefly returned to the adult film industry, not because she wanted to, not because she missed it, but because she needed money to survive. This temporary return has been described by people close to her as the absolute lowest point of her life. It was a stark, painful reminder of how far she'd fallen from being the first vivid girl, the woman who'd once redefined what it meant to be a star in that industry. She was now just another performer trying to make rent. But in the year 2000, something happened that would force Ginger Lynn to completely reinvent herself one final time. Subscribe right now because you won't believe what happens next. In 2000, Ginger Lynn Allen received a diagnosis that changed everything: cervical cancer. She needed an immediate hysterectomy, no time for second opinions. For most people, cancer feels like an ending. But for someone who'd already survived prison, career collapse, addiction, and public humiliation, it became a reset button. The surgery was successful, but forced her into early menopause at 38. The physical recovery was brutal, but the psychological transformation was more powerful. Ginger realized she'd spent 20 years letting others define her: fans, critics, the media, the government. The cancer stripped that away. She stopped caring about Hollywood's approval, the tabloids, or people judging her past. She only cared about surviving and building a life that was actually hers. Today at 62, Ginger Lynn lives a life nobody in 1991 would have believed possible. She's a visual artist with gallery exhibitions across California. She designs custom jewelry through her own business. She hosts a podcast, speaking openly about her struggles and lessons learned. Most importantly, she mentors younger women in the industry about surviving fame and protecting their mental health. Her upcoming autobiography says it all. I did it, I liked it, so what? That title doesn't apologize or justify. It owns every chapter of her story and refuses to let anyone else define what her life meant. Her final years aren't about tragedy. They're about resilience, survival, and refusing to let the world tell her who she's supposed to be. Should Ginger Lynn have gone to prison? Yes or no? Comment below and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.